Alright, hello citizens of the Nigelverse. It is Nigel once again, and on Sunday we finished the movies. We looked at Superman Returns, so if you haven't already, go check out that review. But because of that, it's now time to delve into the series as a whole, the Superman movie series, the initial Superman movie series. He's what went right, what went wrong. Let's evaluate it as most, if not all, my retrospectives go. Gonna be evaluating what went right, what went wrong, and here we have a few categories. So we have the best and worst movie, my favorite and least favorite support character, on at least on like the heroic side. My favorite and least favorite villain, my favorite least favorite support villain, and my favorite overall character, and of course my least favorite overall character. What went right, what went wrong, and ultimately would I recommend the movie series. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So, right off the bat, I'll be very transparent with you guys. Picking the best and worst movie when it came to the series was kind of difficult because both categories came down to two choices, and both were kind of tricky to choose for two very different reasons. Starting with the best movie, it was either between the original Superman movie or Superman 2. Ultimately, I decided I would go with Superman 2 because it takes everything that worked about the first Superman movie, expounds on it a bit more. The villain and fantastic villain, that being General Zod. Lex still gets his time to shine, even though he does take a bit of a backseat. And it does have the Richard Donner cut, so some of the blanks that were filled in, even though some things do contradict the original theatrical version. Having had in having those blanks being filled in and having both versions so that you can watch whichever one you prefer, or I think is pretty cool. So I ultimately decided I would go with Superman 2 for being the best one, but it was kind of a tricky decision, but ultimately I did go with Superman 2. Now, the worst movie I mentioned, this was also a tricky choice for a totally opposite reason. And it's pretty much down to which of the two sucked more, honestly. It was either between Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, or Supergirl. Oh, but ultimately, I know this may cause some head scratches, perhaps, or maybe he may agree with me. And these, keep in mind, are all my own personal opinions. So if you disagree with any of these, that is completely fine. But ultimately, I decided to go with Superman 4, or mainly because the effects were a lot worse. There's at least Supergirl, like some of the effects were cheesy, but at least they looked a lot better than they did in Superman 4. Or Superman 4 was also incredibly short, or at about an hour and a half. At least Supergirl got like the full length movie treatment, and I know why that's the case for Superman 4 with the footage being lost, but sadly, we only did get an hour and a half long movie. Of course, nothing wrong with short movies, but this is a Superman series where each movie was like 2 hours and some change, 2.5 hours even in the case of Superman Returns. And this one only being an hour and a half and being a bad hour and a half, I think really hurt it. And I think the reason I debated whether or not I'd to put Superman 4 or in the worst category, he as opposed to Supergirl, is which one was more damning of a choice. He's a he character who didn't have really much character to begin with other than being Superman's cousin in the case of Supergirl, or a character that gets totally betrayed, like in Superman 4, or like Superman, and of course trying to be the symbol of peace and symbol of justice, but that he looks almost like a goof for essentially in a way letting this happen. Granted, he didn't really know that he would be birthing the nuclear man, but it almost looked like kind of a goof in that regard. So I think that really what swayed my choice for Superman 4. Now, for my favorite and least favorite support characters. For my favorite, you probably saw this coming. I gotta go with Lois Lane. And her being in a way kind of the damsel in distress, but also how I think the way they fleshed out her relationship, not just with Superman but with Clark Kent, I think is was pretty interesting, and showing the different dynamics with Clark Kent. He's kind of just the new guy, kind of fish out of water. Lois does kind of take a liking to him and kind of takes him under her wing in a way, and kind of like that brother sister relationship with Clark. But with Superman, she's all over him, and she is definitely enamored with him, and we see how that progresses, and we see how their relationship kind of blossoms from there. And she's not totally helpless, although she does find a way into different situations. Like as a reporter, she goes out there. She's not afraid to get down and dirty, which is how journalism sometimes it is. So you get in some dangerous spots when it comes to journalism. At least how at least from what I've seen. So I think for that reason, I gotta go with Lois Lane for my favorite support character. My least favorite support character, I gotta go with Jimmy Olsen. I get the vibe they're going for with him, and that being kind of like very young, very naive, just but but I don't think he's as interesting from there as opposed to some of the other support characters, such as like Lois Lane or Perry White. Jimmy's just kind of there, almost in like comic relief territory, although I think they stopped just short of it. But yeah, so I gotta go with Jimmy Olsen. And my favorite and least favorite villain. My favorite villain, I definitely. This one was also a bit of a debate, but ultimately I went with General Zod. It was either General Zod or obviously, of course, Lex Luthor, or which Lex Luthor they did well. They went a bit further with his character, thankfully, in Superman Returns, but otherwise they did well. I just wish they went a little further with it, at least in the initial movies. But General Zod, from the get-go, you see what he's about, how he gets to demonstrate a lot of his power. He's definitely a consistent, powerful force of the movie, just absolutely wreaking havoc, bringing pretty much all of the world, and by the world I mean the United States, to its knees, and really proving to be even more of a match for Superman, and Lex Luthor mainly having the brains and everything, but Zod having the brains and the brawn and the prowess, of course. And it's interesting. I'll be interested to see if and potentially when I go back to watch Man of Steel, because it's been a long time since I've seen Man of Steel, so I forget exactly how they portrayed Zod in the movie. From what people are saying, I think they did relatively well. Even though Zod does ultimately die in that movie. Granted, he also dies in Superman too, yeah, so Zod I think did really well as the villain. In terms of my least favorite villain, and I probably got to go with Nuclear Man. And I don't necessarily know if he counts as like a main villain, I kind of count him and Luthor as co-villains for Superman 4. But Nuclear Man was very uninteresting, unfortunately, and probably the hour and a half runtime probably didn't help his case. Maybe he would have gotten, and that's really speculation on my part, and I know I'm really throwing them a bone here by saying maybe his character would have been fleshed out more if the footage had been lost for Superman 4. Maybe we would have got to see more Nuclear Man and learn a bit more about him. But I have to judge it based off what we got, and what we got wasn't exactly much. Like Nuclear Man kind of just being the muscle in a way for Lex Luthor and trying his best to take it to Superman, and he does get the strike in that causes Superman / Clark to become sick and almost die, but otherwise there's not really a whole lot going on with him, and he almost feels pretty bland. It was either him or Sophia from Supergirl, but ultimately I think I went with Nuclear Man. and at least with Sophia, she's a bit more. Her character's fleshed out a tad bit more, not by much, but by a bit more. But next on my favorite and least favorite support villain is because I figured we'd add this because support characters we have for the heroes, we might as well have support villains. And for the villains, of course. So my favorite support villain, I gotta go with Ursa. Her kind of being the mouthpiece for General Zod, and her kind of having some kind of funny moment I think was pretty cool, and pretty fun, and her, while she doesn't, of course, carry the movie solo, I think she does as she does further it a bit. She does her part, essentially. She does her part. She doesn't take that center stage, but even in the background, even kind of in the cut, she still does her part to push things along, which is usually what a support character is supposed to do. As for my least favorite support villain, I gotta go with Gus Gorman for Superman 3. He mostly because it feels like, hey, and I mentioned this in my review, it almost feels like they didn't really know what to do with this character, and that's a shame. They didn't know if he's supposed to have his redemption and everything, feel bad for what he's doing to Superman, but at the same time also trying to be kind of selfish and swindler or conniver. So it's kind of a weird dynamic. They try to show him as not totally evil and a bit more self-centered, or if anything, which I think is what they were trying to get across. But it does kind of get lost in translation, and it hurts because it's Richard Pryor, or he's supposed to be hilarious. What happened? I think they tried too hard, or because Richard Pryor, trust me, like despite what that movie may lead you to believe, Richard Pryor actually is hilarious. Go watch some of his stand up if you haven't. But yeah, so unfortunately I gotta go with Gus Gorman. And my favorite and least favorite overall character. My favorite overall character, this one's probably pretty obvious, but I gotta go with Superman. Obviously, like Superman, I think they did really well with his character. He was acted phenomenally by Christopher Reeve, R.I.P. of course. You get to see his character as it progresses, for the better and for the worse. But when you root for him, you definitely root for him. You want him to save the day. He's a very likable hero. As Clark Kent, he's shy and nerdy, and I think Christopher Reeve nailed the double role perfectly. Like once it was described to him what type of character it was, because we kind of I believe I brought it up in my Superman 1 review, when Christopher Reeve was inquiring about character, how to play the character and everything, and he was told essentially as a dual role. He definitely took that, and he definitely worked with that, where Clark Kent's very shy, very nerdy and everything, but Superman's very bold and heroic. So playing both sides really well. Hell, and even though the character kind of stumbled at times, I think he did pretty good. And Brandon Ruth, even though he only had the one appearance, only had the one appearance in Superman Returns, that is I think he also did pretty well with the character, including I can't believe I forgot to mention this in my review, when he was being shot by the Turn gun, when they were doing the break, and he was being shot by the Turn gun, and then the robber pulls out the gun and shoots Superman right in the eye, and the bullet bounces off the eye. That was one of the coolest things. How did I forget to mention in my review of Superman Returns? Like, it's been, like, once I realized I forgot to mention it, it had been eating me up pretty much since Sunday when I dropped my review of Superman Returns. But yeah, so I think he still did pretty well, even if he did get the one appearance. And it would have been interesting to see how he would have continued the character if Superman Returns had gotten that sequel. But yeah, so I definitely got to go with Superman there. But thankfully, it's not all bad for Brandon Ruth. He also managed to play Superman and the Atom in like the CW, in the Arrowverse, hers on the CW and everything. So that's shows like Arrow or Flash or Legends of Tomorrow, stuff like that. So I'm glad he somewhat got to play the character in some regard. But as for my least favorite overall villain, I think I got how to go with Nuclear Man, and unfortunately he Nuclear Man, and just wasn't cutting it, and he almost feel bad because it almost almost like could have worked as a character, like someone who is powered by nuclear radiation. Superman kind of feeling the effects of his actions, be it unintentionally. He and then and oh, he has to battle against him, but ultimately just falls flat. It was either this character or Ross Webster from Superman 3, the main villain, but ultimately I decided to go with Nuclear Man. And again, and I don't want to keep harping on it too much, but I feel like I have to. That runtime, like the runtime for Superman 4, I think, even with the movie being as it was, which is not great, I think the runtime shot in the foot just that much more. But now, what for what went right and what went wrong. So, what do I think went right? The way Superman is shown and portrayed. Like I said, you root for him, you feel his emotions, and you want to see him succeed. The characterization, not just of him, but most, at least, of the other characters, are seeing how they're fleshed out, especially in regards to Superman. And the effects, like I said, the effects kind of cheesy for the time, but still relatively convincing. Like, if I was someone, I try to place myself in the shoes of someone who was at that time. At that time, those effects were actually pretty cool. You did believe a man could fly, because that was the tagline for Superman movies. You will believe a man could fly, and you kind of did believe a man could fly. So I think for the time, the effects not too bad. I can't bully them too much, but I can also recognize that for its time, they were pretty solid. The soundtrack, of course, very legendary, iconic soundtrack. It's literally been stuck in my head since I've been reviewing these movies and everything. So, it's stuck there, but it is a very awesome soundtrack. The way Superman uses his powers and the variety of powers they have, like they pretty much covered all, like the super strength, super speed, being able to fly, fly. Obviously, the heat vision, the ice breath, the super breath as well. Like they tackled it, and him using it in a variety of ways. Not just using the raw power, but having to use kind of use his wits to solve different scenarios, and the fact that they managed to fulfill Richard Donner's vision in the Richard Donner cut. I think that is pretty cool. That's they were able to finish the movie, the original vision for the movie. Whether you like or dislike the Richard Donner cut of Superman 2, whether you prefer the original or not, just the fact that we do have it is pretty cool. But then, what do I think went wrong? The director change in the midst of Superman 2, who when it was pretty much almost done, and the disputes and everything that Richard Donner had with the studio, so him being replaced with Richard Lester, like that did definitely hamper the movie, and you kind of saw some of the fallout of that in Superman 3, like Superman 3 and 2 definitely do feel like very different movies. Because it's very different styles, and then Superman 4 compared to Superman's 2 and 3 also feel like very different movies. Because of that kind of direction style, that being Sidney J. Furie and stuff. But then some of the later villains, and going from Lex Luthor and General Zod to Ross Webster and Sophia and Nuclear Man, and like just that huge downgrade of villains. What happened? Really, there's a number of other villains they could have did it for Superman, and like instead of just discount Lex Luthor or very uninteresting villain birthed from a nuclear or weapon going into the sun, or sorceress and everything, slash like witch. Like Brainiac was a character at this time. You could use Brainiac or create a villain who is different than those. The villain's just it's going down. Some of the effects, more so and more so looking at Superman 4 in this regard, or like some of its effects, because you could tell compared to some of the other effects, it's like what happened, and that, and of course Supergirl, that. But like I said, I can't bully it too much. But yeah, then some of the side characters, such as like Gus Gorman, or even or even to an extent, I guess, Jimmy Olsen and or Otis. His even though Otis is supposed to be more comic relief, so I can't bully him that much for it. But yeah, some of the side characters were kind of like take it or leave it. And then the later movies, as I pretty much alluded to, pretty much this whole retrospective, yeah, the wheels kind of fell off in the later movies. They tried to screw the wheels back on, but Superman 2, but sadly they weren't quite able to. But then. And of course, Superman 4 footage being lost, as I have mentioned now multiple times, I am definitely shot it in the foot. And finally, the powers that weren't really with Superman, that looked really cheesy, that were added, such as like the vision that apparently restores stuff in Superman 4, or when Nuclear Man tore down the Great Wall of China, and Superman essentially looked at the Great Wall of China, and the bricks just magically came back up. Like Superman has plenty of other powers. I'm sure you could have came up with something better than that. And although I wonder if that was like a last minute change, maybe because the footage got lost. Although, I think the way I've kind of understood it is that maybe maybe that was supposed to be the complete version, and the footage being lost was just the footage lost. But maybe it's like that. Maybe that was like a failsafe. But now the question: would I ultimately recommend this series of movies? I would say yeah. Despite some of the issues and problems that I've had watching, especially some of the later movies, for starters, those early movies, that being Superman and Superman 2, and I'd say to an extent Superman Returns, even though it doesn't fully capture the magic of the originals. You can tell they definitely kind of did try to, but so those early movies I definitely recommend, and I would kind of recommend the later movies only out of morbid curiosity, just in case you're curious, like, oh, okay, let's see truly how bad. But otherwise, as you can skip those. But like Superman 1, Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut of Superman 2, also kind of out of curiosity, but also see Richard Donner's vision come to life, and Superman Returns, I definitely recommend. And so I'd say it's less of a yes and more of a kinda. Like Superman 3, he for Quest for Peace, and then Supergirl, kind of more of a question mark. You can probably take or leave those, but 1, 2, Richard Donner cut of 2, and Superman Returns, I definitely recommend. So, I literally changed it in my Google Docs / like notes to kinda. I don't know if I can give it the full yes, but at least like a kinda. But I am glad I checked out the movies. The Superman movies are something I've seen reference quite a bit, so I'm glad I was finally able to fully check them out, and to see what all the hoopla was about. But even though things didn't always go the way they could have, and some would argue maybe should have, I am glad I was able to check these movies out. But nevertheless, that is going to do it for this retrospective. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do me a favor: like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, and turn on post notifications so you know every time I upload a video, so you can see as soon as it drops. And let me know in the comments your thoughts on this retrospective and the Superman movies if you haven't checked them out. If you missed any of my other Superman movie reviews, how we did, definitely check those out. The next series of movies, I'm gonna do this one. It's gonna be another superhero movies. We're going back to Marvel, and then after that, I might take a little break from like the superhero movies, at least probably until like next year or so. But the next one is not gonna be long, but I figured because we watched the Spider-Man trilogy for my last year, I should say. Hey, this year we look at the two Amazing Spider-Man movies to see whether see what exactly went wrong. Was it just a case of this isn't Tobey Maguire and people shut it off, or is there more to the story? And how does Andrew Garfield do as the Amazing Spider-Man? And what is up with that Rhino mech? But we will get to that when we get to that. In the meantime, thank you all so much for watching. Go follow me on my social medias. I have officially gone back to posting on those, so we'll be posting updates on there and everything. So go check those out. Twitch, I'll be back on Twitch very, very soon, so I will see you then. But in the meantime, thank you all so much for watching. I will see you guys later. Peace.